Welcome to our special edition of Behind the Screams, where we explore the fascinating world of horror movies. Today, we'll be discussing one of the most intriguing aspects of the genre horror movie cliches. We'll delve into why these cliches work, their pros and cons, and offer a deeper understanding of their impact on the overall horror movie experience. So, grab some popcorn, turn off the lights, and join us on this spine-chilling exploration. Our first cliché is the final girl, the lone survivor of a horror movie, usually portrayed as a young, virginal woman. While this cliché has its merits, it also has its drawbacks. Pros. The final girl represents strength, resilience, and survival, serving as a role model for viewers. This cliché triggers a sense of empathy and rooting for the underdog. Cons. The final girl stereotype can reinforce gender stereotypes and limit the representation of diverse characters within the genre. Next up, we have the ever-popular jump scare, a sudden, unexpected scare meant to startle the audience. Let's explore its effectiveness and potential drawbacks. Pros. Jump scares create immediate tension and startle the audience, enhancing the fear factor. They can keep viewers on the edge of their seats, waiting for the next heart-stopping moment. Cons. Overusing jump scares or relying solely on this technique can make the movie predictable and lessen the impact of genuine scares. It can become repetitive and lose its effectiveness over time, leading to audience fatigue. Now, let's talk about the character who always investigates strange noises, even when it's clearly a bad idea. This cliché has become a staple in horror movies, but it has its pros and cons. Pros. It creates suspense, anticipation, and builds tension as viewers wonder what the character will discover. It provides an opportunity for character development and exploration of the unknown. Cons. It can be seen as an unrealistic and overused trope, as characters often make questionable decisions by investigating dangerous situations. It may lead to the audience questioning the intelligence of the characters and their ability to survive. Our next cliché is the portrayal of children as creepy or possessed. This trope taps into our primal fears and adds a layer of psychological horror to the movie. Pros. Creepy child characters evoke feelings of unease and fear, playing on our fear of innocence turned sinister. They contribute to the exploration of the corruption of youth, making for memorable and chilling moments. Cons. This cliché might perpetuate negative stereotypes about children or contribute to the demonization of youth. It can become overused and lose its impact if not executed creatively or thoughtfully. Another common cliché found in horror movies is the concept of characters being trapped in a house or location with no way to escape. Let's take a closer look at the pros and cons of this cliché. Pros. The locked door cliché creates a sense of confinement and isolation, intensifying the fear and tension. It can provide a setting for claustrophobic horror, adding to the overall atmospheric effect. Cons. This cliché may become predictable and limit the variety of settings or scenarios in horror movies. It can sometimes feel contrived and artificial, especially if used without a logical explanation for the inability to escape. The infamous unreliable phone line. We often see characters in crisis, desperately trying to call for help, only to be met with a dead line. Let's dial into the pros and cons of this cliché. Pros. Disrupted communication isolates characters, creating a sense of helplessness and vulnerability, which intensifies the suspense and fear. It adds a layer of tension and builds anticipation for the character's struggle to find alternative ways of seeking help. Cons. This cliché can feel contrived and artificial if used too frequently or without a logical explanation. It may appear overused and be less impactful if not executed creatively or with a purpose. Our next cliché centers around the slow-chasing killer. This trope often sees the killer walking at a leisurely pace, allowing the victim a fighting chance. Let's examine its pros and cons. Pros. A slow-chasing killer builds suspense, giving the victim and the audience a glimmer of hope for escape, creating a thrilling cat-and-mouse dynamic. It can increase the tension and excitement, as the victim strategizes and tries to outrun the pursuing threat. Cons. This cliché can be seen as unrealistic or cliched, depending on the context, as it might not align with the capabilities of a real-life killer. It may decrease the sense of urgency or the fear factor if not executed effectively or subverted creatively. Our penultimate cliché represents the supernatural entity that often serves as the main source of horror in movies. Let's explore its pros and cons. Pros. Supernatural entities offer limitless possibilities for creating scares, as they are not bound by the rules of reality. They can introduce unique and imaginative horror elements, tapping into our fears of the unknown and unseen. Cons. Over-reliance on supernatural entities can make the movie feel disconnected from reality and reduce the sense of relatability or believability. If not executed well, the supernatural entity can become cliched, predictable, or lack the impact needed to inspire fear. Lastly, we have the classic horror setting of the dark basement or attic. Let's shed some light on its pros and cons. Pros. Dark basements or attics provide a classic horror setting, invoking fear of the unknown, tight spaces, and lurking dangers. They contribute to the overall atmospheric effect and create a sense of claustrophobia and vulnerability. Cons. This cliché can feel overused and predictable, limiting the variety of settings or scenarios in horror movies. It may require creative execution or subversion to maintain its effectiveness and avoid becoming stale. And that brings us to the end of our exploration of horror movie clichés. We hope you enjoyed this spine-chilling journey into the world of familiar tropes and their impact on the horror movie experience. Remember, these clichés have their pros and cons, and it is within the filmmaker's creative execution and ability to subvert expectations that these clichés can truly shine. Thank you for watching, and until next time, stay scared and keep the horror alive.